What's up, Guardians, and welcome back, Titans. I'm Profane. Thanks for checking out the video. Today we're back at it with another incredible prismatic build, and this build is all about optimizing weapon damage and controlling each engagement with a ton of overpowered abilities. So you'll find a ton of success when using this in legendary missions, Grandmaster Nightfalls, dungeons, and raids. This build features the Actium War Rigs, which is an agnostic exotic, having the ability to synergize with any subclass. And when used with Prismatic, the Actium War Rigs will benefit from having more ability synergy and more support than ever before. This exotic continuously reloads a portion of your equipped auto rifle or heavy machine gun's magazine directly from its reserves, allowing you to maintain sustained fire without having to manually reload. This is particularly beneficial when using high-capacity auto rifles and machine guns, as their larger magazine size enables you to lay down consistent damage without interruption. This continuous reload effect is crucial for maximizing your damage output, especially in scenarios where you need to maintain pressure on enemies, like during boss fights or against champions and dense waves of adds. With the addition of new seasonal artifact mods, you'll gain a lot of added benefits when using auto rifles, which makes the Actium War Rigs an even more viable option right now. This exotic comes with the Auto Loading Link intrinsic trait, which provides a passive bonus to the airborne efficiency of any equipped auto rifle and heavy machine gun. And for any equipped auto rifle or machine gun, we'll have our magazine partially reloaded by 10% every second and a half, and this will continue to reload even as we're firing the weapon. So just as an example, if your auto rifle's magazine size is at 50, then that means you'll have 5 rounds pulled into the magazine every second and a half. But if you had a larger magazine capacity of say 150, which is the case for the Sweet Business and several heavy machine guns, you would get 15 rounds back every second and a half. The one caveat to this is that with auto rifles and machine guns that have overflowing traits like Reconstruction or Envious Assassin, we wouldn't see ammo regeneration kick in for these weapons until their magazine size gets down to 100% of its normal capacity. So just by using an equipped auto rifle or heavy machine gun, we can lay down a continuous bed of sustained fire. And with the right combination of weapon perks, we can really optimize on our damage output when it comes to crowd control scenarios or boss damage. One of the most versatile aspects of this build is that we can incorporate high burst damage weapons into our loadout without ever losing any of the benefits that the Actium War Rigs provide. So as an example, we could have an auto rifle like the No Hesitation equipped to be able to cover sustained fire and give our teammates healing. And then we could have a grenade launcher like the Edge Transit for high burst damage. Or we could go with the Wither Horde for damage over time, combined with an auto rifle and a heavy machine gun like the Song of Uriut with bait and switch. There's a lot of great combinations and powerful auto rifles and heavy machine guns that will benefit from the use of the Actium War Rigs, and we intend on addressing as many of them as we can. But before we get to that, let's talk about how we can use this prismatic subclass to optimize the performance of the Actium War Rigs. We start with our choice in Super, where we have the only Tier 3 Super that Prismatic Titans have the option of, and that's Twilight Arsenal. This is a high burst damage super that will go great with our focus around auto rifles, since we can pop our super and transition right back into weapon use. Twilight Arsenal also applies weakening effects, which will increase the damage that we deal against those enemies by 15%. We'll address our artifact mods in further detail here soon, but we are using the Expanding Abyss artifact mod, so that any void weapon or ability will deal increased damage against weakened targets. With Twilight Arsenal applying a 15% weakening debuff, this would get increased to 25% for those void weapons and abilities. This does encourage us to stick with void affinities, but we do intend on having a mixture of different energy types with this build. When it comes to our choice in aspects, we are going with a combination of Dringer's Lash and Knockout. The reason that we're using Dringer's Lash is because it's going to suspend enemies after using our thruster or barricade, making them easy targets for us to mow through with our auto rifles or machine guns. This is great to use against overly aggressive enemies, and it will stun unstoppable champions and prevent barrier champions from casting their shields, and it also counts as a strand debuff, which will be of importance. With Knockout active, we'll have a pretty reliable source of health regeneration and bonus melee damage. Whenever landing a powered melee final blow will trigger the amplified bonus, and will also gain bonus health points based on the enemy's difficulty level, providing us with between 50 and 100 points of extra health. This also grants bonus damage to our powered and unpowered melee abilities, and it will turn our unpowered melee into a powered arc melee that would have the ability of creating orbs whenever using the heavy-handed gloves mod. These two aspects work great in tandem, as we can suspend aggressive targets and then do what Titans do best: punch, punch, punch. When it comes to our powered melee of choice, we are going with Shield Throw, and the reason for that is that this gives us a ranged melee option, which will be more beneficial for us because of our increased focus towards weapon use. Shield Throw will also engage a 15-point overshield with each enemy that it strikes, and when overshields are active, will have a 50% reduction to incoming damage. One of the biggest hindrances in having optimal damage is death, so ensuring that we have some sort of health regeneration and damage reduction in place before going into a damage phase will be crucial. Moving on, we have our choice in grenades, which we have decided on going with suppressor grenades. Suppressed enemies are taken out of combat for 9 seconds, which gives us another method to control our engagements and increase the effectiveness of our auto rifles, machine guns, and our melee abilities. Another reason we're using suppressor grenades is due to our use of Facet of Dominance, which causes our void grenades to apply weakening. This is another 15% debuff that will get increased to 25% because of Expanding Abyss. So now we're going to have Twilight Arsenal and Suppressor Grenades giving us increased damage against weakened enemies, which will greatly improve the efficiency of the Actium War Rigs with any auto rifle and any machine gun loadout. We're also using the Facet of Dawn, so whenever we strike enemies with our Shield Throw or Amplified Arc Melee, we'll trigger Radiance, which will give all of our weapons a 25% increase in damage. While this is active, we'll be able to pierce barrier champion shields, as long as our weapons aren't already dedicated to a different champion type. This is where having void weapons will really become even more beneficial, because not only will we have the 25% bonus radiant damage, but we'll have the 25% weakening debuff, giving those weapons a massive advantage right now. To give ourselves bonus survivability when we are surrounded by enemies, we're using Facet of Protection, which will grant a 15% bonus and damage reduction whenever 2 enemies are close by. This will get increased to 32% whenever we're in our Transcendent state. And since we're also using the Galvanic Armor artifact mod, whenever we are amplified, we'll have an extra 30% damage reduction bonus. So between overshields and damage resistance, we're going to be damn near indestructible. We're also using Facet of Courage, which is going to grant a 10% bonus in damage to all light-based abilities whenever the target is under the effects of a darkness debuff. This will grant us bonus damage against enemies who are suspended from Drinker's Lash. But because we are also using the Facet of Solitude, we'll be able to inflict severing effects onto enemies after repeated precision hits. This will neuter enemies' damage output by 40%, and it will grant that 10% increase in damage to any solar, arc, or void ability. So if we can get our enemies suspended or severed before hitting them with weakening effects, then we'll be able to deal a lot more damage. We're also going to be able to cash in on this bonus damage whenever we're in our Transcendent state, since our combo grenade jolts and suspends enemies. And when we are in our Transcendent state, the Severing Blast from Facet of Solitude will be larger. Now that we've covered our class tree options, let's talk more about the artifact mods that are going to amplify this build's performance. To increase the efficiency of our grenade and melee abilities, we are using Shield Crush. Whenever we have Radiance and Amplified active, this will grant a 25% increase in our grenade's regeneration rate and a 25% bonus in its damage. And when we have a Void Overshield active, we'll get the same benefit given to our melee. With increased uptime of our Shield Throw and Suppressor grenades, we'll be able to trigger Radiance more often, activate our Overshield more consistently, and apply weakening effects onto a lot more enemies. We're using Press the Advantage, which is going to give our weapons an increase in handling, stability, and reload speed after breaking a combatant's shield. The increased handling and stability is what we're really after, because that's going to make it easier to land precision hits, so that we can trigger those severing effects more easily. We've also got Sustained Fire active, so whenever we apply continuous damage onto a target with any auto rifle, we'll gain a 40% damage resistance bonus that will last for 6 seconds. This will trigger after landing 10 consecutive shots with any auto rifle, and these effects will stack on top of the resistance that we'll gain from overshields, faceted protection, and galvanic armor. We've also got Targeting Auto Reload, which is another mod that will synergize great with the Actium War Rigs. After rapidly defeating at least 2 enemies, will trigger a stacking damage bonus that provides increased auto rifle damage and partial reloading of our magazine, and this will increase in stacks as we defeat more enemies, with the damage bonus starting at 10%, but maxing out at 20%. And the amount of ammo refilled will start at 10% once the first 2 enemies are defeated. But as we defeat more enemies, this will max out at 40% of our magazine that's getting refilled automatically. Having these secondary sources of auto-reloading our weapons will greatly improve our ability to lay down a sustained bed of fire, ensuring that we're able to deal optimal damage at all times. Because our auto rifles and machine guns will continuously be reloaded, it'll be counterintuitive to use weapons that have traits that rely on manual reloading, as these won't have the ability to perform at maximum potential. So when choosing our auto rifles and machine guns, we want to avoid traits like kill clip, or volt shot, as these will only trigger after a manual reload. Instead, we want weapons with traits like rampage, forble, target lock, precision instrument, attrition orbs, focused fury, onslaught, or killing tally. Traits like triple tap, subsistence, rewind rounds, even demolitionist, grave robber, and 4th times the charm won't be nearly as effective as they would normally be, but they will still bring a lot of extra benefits. Since void weapons will have the greatest advantage, having traits like repulsor brace would give us another source of having void overshields, while destabilizing rounds and dragonfly would increase our effectiveness with crowd control. Some of the best legendary auto rifles to use on this build will be the Kvostov, the Sweet Sorrow, the Ross Arago, the Age-Old Bond, the Abyss Defiant, or the No Hesitations. Some of the best legendary machine guns to use will be the Hammerhead, the Commemoration, Retrofit Escapade, the Circular Logic, Pro Memoria, or the Spellologist. When it comes to our choice in exotics, there's several auto rifles and machine guns that would synergize great with our use of the Actium War Rigs and those auto rifle artifact mods, but we do have just as much freedom in our exotic choice as we do with our legendary. The Sweet Business would be great at tearing through rank and file enemies, even yellow bars, but it falls short when it comes to boss damage, as it's not even able to surpass 1,000,000 points in a 30-second damage phase against the Grasp of Avarice ogre boss Farazia. Since it deals bonus damage on every 7th shot, the Kvostov would be a great option out of the kinetic slot, and so would the Quicksilver Storm. But there's also the Cerberus +1, which would also benefit from having continuous auto reloading. The Centrifuge would be a great option for optimal crowd control since it creates blinding explosions. But the best energy slot exotic auto rifle to pair up with the Actium has got to be the Choir of One. This new exotic auto rifle is anything but an auto rifle. It's like a scout rifle when aiming down sights, but it's more of a rapid fire shotgun mixed with fusion rifle when using hip fire. Both modes offer incredible advantages and high damage potential. The hip fire burst option is going to be better in close to mid-range engagements, but with the slower rate of fire that its scout rifle mode offers, you would never have to manually reload. But it's in its hip fire mode that the Actium War Rigs will not be as effective, and this is because the Choir of One fires out a volley of 5 projectiles on each hip fire shot, and with only 25 rounds in the magazine, you won't be able to get nearly as much ammo getting automatically reloaded. This will still generate 3 rounds of ammo every 1.5 seconds, but you'll burn through the entire clip in about 3 to 4 seconds, so you'll only see the Actium pull in about 6 to 9 rounds of ammo. But that's only going to have an impact on damage phases, where we're trying to get all of our rounds out quickly. For a special ammo auto rifle, the Choir of One pumps out a lot of damage, and it's extremely cohesive to all the auto rifle artifact mods, and those that benefit void energies. In a 30-second damage phase against the Grasp of Avarice Ogre boss Farazia, this auto rifle is able to deal out just over 2 million points of damage, and that's without a debuff getting applied. So whenever we go for maximum damage output and add in our other weapons, our super and abilities, we're able to deal out around 5 million points of damage in just 30 seconds, which is amazing. The one caveat to using the Choir of One is that it does have limited ammo, which forces you to use a primary weapon in the kinetic slot. I would normally recommend using a rocket sidearm to go with your auto rifle, but even with lead from gold, on something like the Call, you'll still find the lack of ammo to be a major impact. With that said, I strongly encourage using Ammo Finder, Reserve, Scavenger, and Special Finisher armor mods to help keep us loaded up on ammo. Moving on to our heavy slot exotics, we've got some truly glorious options, because we have the Xenophage, the Heir Apparent, the Grand Overture, and the Deterministic Chaos. The Thunderlord is not getting included in this list because it already has a built-in option to automatically reload itself, so the Actium War Rigs wouldn't give it any further benefit. That's quite the different case for the Xenophage and the Deterministic Chaos, which both have much smaller magazines and extremely slow reload speed. So with the Actium equipped, those exotics will excel far beyond their normal potential. Since the Heir Apparent will cast a shield around its user, it would make for a great survival option for those challenging encounters where you're taking a constant barrage of incoming damage. The Grand Overture is hands down the best option for optimal damage, as landing shots builds up a volley of rockets, and without having to ever reload, we'll be able to trigger those rocket volleys much more often. Out of all of these options, the Choir of One or Grand Overture would be my top recommendations for both boss damage and general use. As I mentioned earlier, the Actium War Rigs gives us the freedom to incorporate plenty of high burst damage options and options that deal damage over time. So you'll find grenade launchers and rocket launchers that have built-in abilities to reload themselves will fit right into this Actium War Rigs build. With weapons, class tree, and artifact now addressed, there's only one thing left for us to talk about, and that's our choice in armor and armor mods. The main character stat that we want to focus on will be resilience, to reduce how much damage that we take. With tier 10 resilience, that'll be reduced by 30%, and will also have faster regeneration of our barricade or thrusters. Focusing towards recovery would help us regenerate health faster, which would be a great benefit to have in more challenging content. I would devote the rest of your armor stats towards discipline and strength so that we can reduce how long it takes for our melee and grenade abilities to recharge. But we do want to make sure that we have at least 30 intellect to minimize the time that it takes our super to recharge. There's a significant depreciation when going beyond 30 points, so you'll find better use out of armor stats elsewhere. Since this build is heavily focused around weapon use, we do intend on using weapon surge mods to be able to amplify our damage potential even more. To charge those surges, we need armor charges, and to gain those, we need orbs, which is why we're using Siphon Helmet mods, the Reaper class item mod, and either a heavy-handed or firepower gloves mod. Any extra slots that we have should be used to benefit our use of weapons, so having ammo reserve, Finder, and Scavenger mods on will help out greatly. And if using the Choir of One, having a Reloader mod would also be beneficial. This is an extremely hard-hitting build that will chew through rank and file enemies just as easily as it will big beefy yellow bar champions and bosses. So if you're a Titan who's looking for a great and reliable build to deal out optimal damage, then look no further than this Actium War Rigs Prismatic build. With that said, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this new Actium War Rigs build, the new exotic auto rifle, the Choir of One, and the current state of Destiny. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you need help setting up this build for yourself, then be sure to check out the Mobalytics link that's down in the description, where you'll be able to find this and a ton of great in-game builds. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. If you're a new Light Guardian just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran who's just looking for a new place to call home, then be sure to check out the Discord link that's also down in the description, and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.